lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me again, I have another awesome guest. I have MS Harkness. Welcome, man. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
I guess you could say I'm still kind of a newer fan to your work. I don't know. I mean, it's been 2 years. I read Tinderella, which I loved, and I've been saving Desperate Pleasures to read until I knew I was going to talk to you because I wanted it, kind of fresh on my mind, which, by the way, it was really awesome.
Thank you.
Real quick, if you could share with everybody listening, watching a little bit about yourself and, how you got into cartooning.
Yeah. So for folks who aren't aware of what I do, it's a lot of autobio comics. So I've made a couple graphic novel length books about just kind of like my life in my early 20s. It's all very mature. It's kind of a little bit of Julie Doucet, a little bit of Chester Brown, very like non-90s confessional autobio stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm modern in the sense of like I went to art school in Minneapolis and studied with Kevin Huizinga, who's a big like independent comic creator himself. So I like making longer work. I'm working on my third graphic novel right now, which is going to be out with Fantagraphics in a couple of years. But I also do like doing anthologies and mini comics and stuff. It's just all like slice of life out of my life, so it's less superheroes and more grounded in reality. So
Yeah, I mean, that's like something I would say. I mean, I think when I like probably like 13 or something when I got into like Vertigo and stuff, and that's when like I'm like, oh shit, there's more than superheroes in comic books. And then like I got older, and I would say in the last like 2 to 3 years is when I really got into some of like this very like the much smaller publishers. Uncivilized has like become one of my like go-to when they launch a new book, and that's how I discovered your work, because I discovered Uncivilized because of Craig Thompson's Ginseng Roots, and then me to all the other stuff that they got going on. And congrats on the Fantagraphics book, by the way. Fantagraphics is, I think that's my favorite publisher right now, next to Image. Kind of like is hit or miss with me lately, but I love Fantagraphics. I love everything they're putting out, and slice of life has become probably my favorite genre in comics, and I think that's why I really enjoyed your stuff. And I know that you're pulling from your real life, and like you don't hold back anything, and that's really cool. I like that a lot about your work.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I worked with Tom Kaczynski at Unciv. It was really convenient in the sense that we were both in Minneapolis, so it was like a work meeting was like biking over to just across town to like talk about book stuff. But yeah, it was good working with him and working on that level. And I'm just glad that Fantagraphics is interested in working with me. It's been a good experience so far. So
yeah. What made you decide to get into cartooning as a profession?
I've always been drawing. I think like I don't have a fairly interesting kind of backstory in the sense of like I would go to the library with my mom and just like fill up a tote bag with like Garfield and Far Side as a kid. So like I was always really interested in doing that. Watched a ton of cartoons and like anime and stuff when I was growing up, and I don't know why it was. I think it was just the availability of just being able to do everything myself. Like I never was like I'm gonna be an animator. I'm never gonna like make things move, or I don't know, become a graphic designer or something. But yeah, I mean, when I was in college, I think I thought I would work for Image or something. And then it was like a matter of doing some like smaller autobio comics and people being like, this is insane. Like, I don't know how you just did this 12 pager about like trying to have sex at the airport. And I'm like, oh, this is funny to other people. So refined my taste some, and it's gotten better. But yeah, I like playing around with autobio and like reading tons of it and like being inspired by what other people are doing. So
who were some of the, not necessarily artistic influences to you, but who were some of the artists that really kind of changed the way you thought and looked at comics?
Yeah, like Julie Doucet and Chester Brown are pretty high up there. I get compared to Joe Matt sometimes, and like I'm like, no, I want to be more like Chester Brown, like of like the Canadian three dudes. I feel like Julie Doucet should be like up there and like a fourth. I really like just like their kind of curation process for like what's going to constitute a good story and just like how they can frame things up. Julie Doucet is just like the way that she can layer up panels in like her Dirty Plot series and like her My New York Diary series, I think are amazing. But yeah, I mean, these are people I maybe come across like later in the sense of like I wasn't like reading them and then starting to make comics. It was like these lovely little like moments along the way of like trying to figure out what kind of cartoonist I'd be, and I'd like back read their work because I didn't know about it and was like, oh my god, this is amazing. But yeah, they're great. I really like Uli Lust. I really like Nina Bunjevac. Just like other women kind of working from their own life or their family history and stuff like that. So it's really cool.
And was Slice of Life, was that always like your goal? Like that's the type of books and type of comics that you wanted to do?
No, because I think like I had it in my head I had to go to college because my mom pressed upon like the importance of going, and I'm not necessarily upset that I did, but it was a sort of thing where it's like you go to art school and you maybe have like you're maybe just going there because like drawing is the only thing you're good at, so it's like you have to figure out how to like shoehorn a career out of that.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was like, I guess I'll work for Image or like draw other people's stories. But it was like, I don't really read a lot of that. And like, I frankly wasn't talented enough to be like right out of college, you know, doing someone else's work that has to be at this certain level. And I really just work traditionally. I don't really work digitally that much. So it was like, this is not something I'm going to be doing. And yeah, I did a 24-hour comic at one point, and it's like in art school you're literally critiquing as you would like a fine art painting. You're
Mhm.
bringing comic pages to class, and like I have a BFA in comic books somehow. But it was like, you know, you sit through like 5 hours of these things, like just comics that fucking suck, and they just are not good, and you have to sit there and like think of things that are like, you know, valid to say about them. But it's like when you actually get to present a work that like people are like, laughing at and are like, oh my god, this is great, you're like, okay, like noted, I will continue doing this and figure out how to do it better. So that was a pretty formative experience in that, like, you know, once you staple a book like that and go to a show and like start making friends, it keeps rolling downhill and things happen. So
Like so that's like your first like comic book that you illustrated, right? It was the 24-hour comic. But can you take us from that and then how you ended up with Uncivilized and publishing?
I mean, just going to a lot of shows, I feel like. For the uninitiated, there's all sorts of like zine fairs and like small press shows. So it's like there's definitely been times where like you'll see me at like a Wizard World con and like nobody knows why I'm there. Like I don't know why I'm there. They're like they like email me and I'm like, there's like free food. Okay, sure. Like if I'm a creator, I just get like free like concessions. And you're like, maybe make $50, but most people are just like mad you're not drawing Spider-Man. So it's like a weird shitty day. But yeah, I kind of through the process of going to art school, you're like figuring out where these events are, and you're just kind of like trying to find your people. And a lot of times it was like I was making friends with people that were doing like maybe doing action comics or maybe doing like very like zine poetry books where it's like there's maybe some kind of comic overlap, but it's not as pronounced, but still just like making friends based on like common interests of like music or wrestling or just like weird shit that like we both enjoy. And then it just branches out. Like you like the one of the first shows I went to is in Columbus, Ohio, and it was non-juried, which just meant that like you can be shit and you can still get a table. Like we tried to get in the Chicago Alternative Comics Expo, and they were like, no, you guys suck, like go away. So we were like, screw it, we're gonna be punk rock and we're like, gonna like drive like 4 states over and like just do what we can. We had an amazing weekend. Like I lost a car in the process, and that it was like very punk rock where like my engine column cracked in half on the way home. But we like stayed with the curator at the cartoon museum and like kind of met everyone that I'm like super good friends with in comics now. So like then those people were like asking me to do anthology pieces and like letting me sleep on their couch when I was in town or like asking around other places if we needed to stay in other areas. So um you know, like the first couple of years you're going to these things and like it's like first time like maybe you're in an area, it's like you meet a good handful of people that like then just like continue to support you in some way. So um you just get a who's who each time you come. And like with working with Tom, at Uncivilized, like I actually had kind of fielded Tinderella to him originally just because it was like he was around, he was just proximal to me. And he was kind of like, yeah, okay, like this is a good book or whatever, but you know, sure, like why don't you just go and publish it somewhere else and whatever. And I did, and like it was fine and well received. So when I was doing Desperate Pleasures, and really I did show that like I could draw a significant amount better like with the second book. So it was like not only am I like less scrappy, but like I've like shown you that I can like make a book and then make another book. So he was like, yeah, I mean like this is a very easy book usually to sell, and that it's like this is autobiographical comics, which you know like Craig Thompson, like blankets. It's very easy to explain to people.
Right.
So then people can read it, and if they don't really know comics, they can kind of be like, I read a comic and try and like be cool about it. So um it strays in the zone of being really narrative based, but still kind of arty. So it's a good mix for people to read, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I laughed out loud. It's been a little while since I read Cinderella, but I remember like thinking it was hilarious, you know, like in the
Thank you.
and then I think because we did a written interview for my site, I think shortly after that, and I had asked you how much of it was true, and you're like all of it, and I was like, oh shit, okay, you know, and I think so. Then when I read Just for Pleasures, I think that just kind of influenced my reading experience to where I knew everything was real going into it, and I think that just enhances the experience for me personally, and that's what I love about autobio stuff is that it reaches you on a different level than say reading a Superman or a Batman. You know, I do want to ask how have any of the people that you put in the book perceived like the way that they were depicted?
Yeah. I would say the majority of the people I keep pretty close to the chest and that have read it, and that there's some kind of conversation that comes across where I'm letting them know, like, hey, like, not only am I going to talk about like this thing, but like, here's why I'm going to talk about it in the sort of context of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's times where I'm like including my family or my friends in such a way where it's like, it's maybe not exactly like a real conversation we've had, or maybe it's like several conversations we've had kind of like pushed into one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I always try and do a good job of not really making anyone the villain, in like a just a way of where I'm like, I want to talk to these people later on, and like, I don't, I really just want it to be a kind of straight up narrative where it's not like I'm trying to make a really flat character that doesn't really like
Right.
even operate as like a real person. So I tell people like what's up. I tell people like why I'm including it for the sense of like, okay, like at this point in the story, and like I'm gonna kind of like juxtapose like another scene with it in such a way where like maybe it looks like you're disappointing me, or maybe it looks like you know you're not taking what I'm saying seriously, and it's just to like pump up this other scene. So especially for my family, there's times where it's difficult. Like it's not. I generally feel like a shitty Kool-Aid man busting into their life with like, here's all this shit that like we thought was settled, but it's not. Like,
Mm-hmm.
my mom really did like the part that I put in like all graphite, like all pencil in the middle of Desperate Pleasures, and that like that I think was really it landed really well with her, and it wasn't like traumatizing or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I there's times where I obviously change names or faces just to like keep people safe. Um, and I've never really had a screaming match with anyone. There's been times where people have been like, I would prefer you to say it like this or that. And I'm always like, absolutely. Like, I'm not too cool to like change something that you're uncomfortable with. So,
Yeah. By the way, I really like the graphite in the middle of the book. Like the change in the art style was really cool.
thank you.
Yeah, and this one, like Tinderella, to me was a little bit more. There was more humor to it, right? Like you get a little bit more serious with Desperate Pleasures in terms
Yeah.
of what was your decision to kind of break away from just like more of a humorous slice of life and really dive deep into like who you are and stuff that you have experienced in your life.
It's just the stories I want to tell to some extent. I feel like a lot of like the really schlocky, self deprecating stuff, I just kind of choose to put into my minis because like if something's a cartoon, like it's kind of inherently simplified and you like want it to feel real, but also it's a punching bag. It's like a banana peel. It's not supposed to be something that you're super empathetic with. It's like very loose. So like I've done really goofy minis that are about like really serious things but are like played for laughs because that's the intention. It's like I don't need you to necessarily get in your feelings and focus on this. But with a graphic novel, it's like so much longer. There's so much more space. So I want to like actually work within that medium where it's like this isn't like an anthology of a bunch of like knock jokes. It's like this long kind of arcing thing. With especially with like Desperate Pleasures, it's just like I'm turning up a pressure gauge like the whole book until like you have like the ending piece of it where it's leading into like what the third book will be, where it's like here's like a person who's stumbling and failing but trying their best to like actually get ahead of like these problems that are just like really cyclical. So it's kind of like me trying to be like I'm this person, like you've maybe heard my name, you've read Tinderella, like here's like my really loud scream into the universe, and it's a good indication of just like kind of like the range of ideas I want to talk about. So
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what. Well, I kind of figured, I expected one thing, and because of this, the serious tone of where the story goes within the middle, towards the middle of the book, like it wasn't shocking, but I was like, oh man, like that was not something I expected, and I think that like I enjoyed that aspect of it. Like it kind of broke what I thought I was gonna get, and I enjoyed it more than like I liked this one a little bit better than Tinderella. Not to say that I don't like Tinderella, but like I liked where you went with this story, and I liked like that you were messing with the different art styles with the graphite and stuff like that.
well, good. I'm glad you didn't call me to be like, yo, let's dunk on your new book and talk about your old shit because it was better. So.
No. I mean, and that's what I love about work. You know, like sometimes artists, and I can't think of one off top, but they could be stagnant, and they're just like they try to play it safe, right?
Right.
Don't like try to change anything up. And I like when I get what I expect and more, and that's what I feel like I got with this book. And I think it was phenomenal. And I think it's, I mean, you're being nominated for awards for this book, right? From the email that I got from the newsletter from Uncivilized, that Desperate Pleasures has been nominated for quite a few awards. How do
Yeah.
you feel like to see your work being acknowledged?
It's cool. It's nice to see your friends text you and be like, this is cool. You should be happy about it. It's ultimately like, I don't know. I just try and focus on what I have on my plate and not worry about like what some jury's gonna get into. I like when there's money involved. I like when I'm like, oh sweet, like I can win like all this money if I get this thing, and that's fun to get excited about that. I mean, I feel like there's a million different kind of memoir stories that are out there. I feel like there's priority that's placed on like what the timeliness of something happening. So it's like, my book came out during pandemic and an election year, and I can't really anticipate those sorts of things. So like if people read it and then go like, well, this is like this kind of story in this political environment and like it doesn't deserve accolades above this book, it's like I can't really help that, and I can't really help like the idea of like somebody putting my book next to someone else's and being like her book is really good and it's way better, like she worked harder than those, like that's bullshit. So I'm not trying to get caught into the haze of comic graphic novel fame because it's like it's a complete delusion onto oneself. So I'm just working on my next book. I'm excited to be working with a new publisher. I'm excited for the fact that like I have a lot of people I really want to work with asking me to work with them. So those things are all really cool, and I think that's more tangible than like some people in some other state who are like, I read your thing in this one list and that's why I read it and it was good or something. So yeah.
Speaking of your other book, I was wondering, could you share a little bit about the project, what it's going to entail, and do you look at it as some sort of trilogy almost? Like,
Yeah, no, there's like a whole saga. um, yeah, it's like it kind of just picks up right where Desperate Pleasures leads off, where like the character that is me in that book, it's like a personal trainer handbook. So there's this kind of aspect of like the whole kind of drumbeat of the book is like me working through like the problems of life, but as it relates to like movement and like just like the labor and like the ritual and the chore of just like caring for yourself every day. So it's not like a self-help book, and it's not like a weird like gooey um clean montage where I just like get really, I dust myself off and keep moving, but it's just it's presented linearly as opposed to Desperate Pleasures, which jumps around quite a bit. So like the challenge that I wanted to work with was like, okay, actually tell like the story of a year and don't do like a bunch of flashbacks. Like you can't, you like don't have that tool at your disposal after doing that book. Like, and then what I ended up doing was trying to tell the story in like 9 and 12 panel pages. So it was really frustrating. I'm like 60 pages in right now, and I can kind of like hold up some pages I've done. I'm going to put on my Patreon probably in the next week or so. I can pull the big one down. But it's all like it's almost like going from like a 3/4 arrangement or something to like 4/4. And so for like 2 months, I was like, I don't know how the fuck I'm pacing this, because it was just so different. Like in Desperate Pleasures, it's like you have a lot of like pages that were like 3 or 6 panels, and like now it's like 9 is like the least you get almost. So
wow, okay.
So yeah, and it's a little bit longer, so it's like it's just a lot more labor, but I'm like finally getting in the swing of like figuring out how the book needs to work. Because after I read Desperate Pleasures through, I was like, this goes way too fast. Like I need to like waste people's time just like that much more. Because it's like it's kind of concussive and like hard to see because it's just like too much deep, heavy, crazy shit hitting you too fast. So little things I give myself where I'm like, these are my obstacles. Like, how do I overcome them? So
I mean, I think that's cool. I think that like I can see the growth from Tinderella to Desperate Pleasures, and I'm very excited to see how you grow as an artist and a creative with your next book. What's the name for the book?
it's called Time Under Tension. So it's sort of referring to like certain kinds of workouts are like there's like a tempo implication of like if you're completing a rep, it's like I don't know if you or your viewers work out, where it's like if you're like bench pressing, it's like a fast up or like a slow down, or like there's just some sort of time count for it.
Okay.
So it's just kind of referring to just this kind of, I mean, obviously like personal training or whatever and workouts, but just like I feel like all my books are like creating some kind of like pressure the whole time, and then there's like either a release or not. So it's tricky.
And the format. I mean, you're doing 9 panels. Are we going to get a larger size book in terms of
It's gonna
like?
be longer, but I like the Desperate Pleasure size. It's just like
Okay.
this fat little book that I like really just like how thick and like square it is. And Eric was like, "Oh well, we should do like such and such hardcover." I'm like, "No, I want like a little flappy phone book. Like you don't get it. Like this is all my little deep personal stories. Like you put it in a hardcover book, it's like no, this is she's taking herself too seriously now." So I think they want to do that because libraries are just like they prefer that kind of book. So
I mean, I love hardcovers, but I mean, I'll buy the book no matter what format it's in because
right.
man, I'm really excited to see. I know it's going to be a couple of years, but I'm very excited to see the new book. I know that you also like, well, first off, you started self-publishing before you went to a publisher, right? And I
Right.
you published like mini comics and stuff. What is it like? What is the difference for you when you're self-publishing as opposed to working with a publisher? Like, do you
I
feel
love
freedom to do your?
self-publishing. I think I just like making minis better because it's just such a quicker turnaround where um I mean, books take time. Books take time, and it takes a lot more organization, and it takes talking and trying to like it's so frustrating trying to convince other people to like put the time of day in to like give a fuck about what you need to do in terms of like, hey, like is this being not like is this in for awards consideration, like is somebody going to like talk to shows to make sure that people give a fuck, like it's all these like checklist type stuff where I mean, if you make a stink about it, you're like a bitch, right? So it's like I really care about what I'm doing, and I want to like make sure that for the level I'm at, like I want to make sure that like by putting in all this fucking effort and drawing all these drawings, like at least the most amount of people that would want to see it can see it. Um, so when I self-publish, it's literally like, cool, okay, like is the sun out? Can I bike to fucking Kinko's, or can I just like go to my friend's house to scan stuff on his large format scanner? Like it's all upon me to just like formulate everything and like get whatever quotes I need. And I am very like industrious in that I get a lot done in a day. So taking like pre-orders on my own website and just like handling all that myself is like I'll turn on my little notification on my phone like anytime someone will buy a book. It's just like, oh, just like hearing people buying my book. Like it's very gratifying, as opposed to like sitting at home like staring at the ceiling like, well, I hope it's good. Like I hope other people are buying it, because you'll email someone and be like, is anyone like am I getting royalties? And you just like wait a week and a half and be like, yes, here's an Excel sheet, and you're like, okay, cool. So the just the immediate like monkey kind of gratification of it is just so much more, and you just have more control because there's just less moving parts. I will call up specific comic book stores that will like put my stuff out front, and they'll sell it quickly, and they'll give me all the money I need, so it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't. I've seen you post, but I haven't seen the mini comics that you've got. I definitely am gonna hit up the website, and you still have some available right now.
Yeah, so I can hold them up.
Yeah, yeah.
Matt, if you're interested in a specific lean of story, it's I'm running low on some things, but the nice thing about a lot of these distribution like avenues for small press comics is that like if in like a major city, they'll probably have my work somewhere. But I have an anthology which is like 3 short stories I did. One is like the time I got like so out of my mind high on edibles at like an anime convention. So it's like I just inhabit like a Hunter S. Thompson narration the whole time, and it's like just me like staring at cosplayers with like drool down my mouth. I've got like one about like my cat's origin story, and that like I have this like reoccurring Persian cat in all my comics that I got in a very stupid way. So it's less a cute cat comic, and it's more about like what happens when you work delivery for Jimmy John's. But I got a third one in there. I got a cool like song comic, and then this one I actually released last summer because it's sort of political, and that I have like a gynecological like horror nightmare thing happening right during like the 2016 election.
Mhm.
So I made it like kind of with the anticipation of like drawing this drawing where I'm like voting for like Biden and like a with a mask on and like a burning house, and just reflecting just how out of sorts everything was last year, just in general. So that was really well received. It was really fun to make. I got to make it right after I finished Desperate Pleasures, along with a couple other anthology pieces that are going to be released. I'm going to be in the Fantagraphics Now anthology, which is like they do it like a couple times a year. So that'll come out soon, I guess. I don't know when it is, but yeah, there's some stuff on my website, and I'm just like always running out of Desperate Pleasures copies. So there'll be more at some point.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I definitely want to check those out. Dope Dealer. That's the name of it. That's it's awesome. Okay, I've lost my train of thought where I was going. Oh, that's what I wanted to ask. So like you've worked with Tom, now you're working with Gary. What would you say is the difference of working with Tom at Uncivilized as it is to Gary? Like what's the difference experience like for you?
They're both I'm mostly working with Eric, I should say. I've
Oh,
I've
okay.
talked to Gary a couple times about sports stuff that shows, but I know Eric better, and he's like my contact person. Well, but both of them like draw and like are creators themselves, so like the experience isn't necessarily like one is like got me on a short leash or anything like that. Like they're both very much about like letting you, you know, make the book you want to make, with the assumption that, you know, if there's like very like low order like spelling problems or like points in the story that don't really make sense, like they'll point them out in a way that's like trying to encourage you to think about how to do it better. So no, I mean they're both very smart, you know, people that are trying to publish things that they actually really care about, and like things that they think are really valuable, just like in the context of like trying to show that comics are like a language that we all kind of speak like without really having to think about it. Like the barriers of language are so much less for like a lot of these like, you know, wordless, you know, independent comics that, you know, can get really artsy and out there with like however they're printed, or if they're, you know, like non-verbal weird screen print, you know, colors
Hmm.
and shapes just interacting in panels, right? But I think they both kind of, to my knowledge, have like a, you know, like a background in like some kind of art and design, and then they both like liked, you know, superheroes and like comics unironically, you know, like growing up. So yeah, I mean, like it's a good experience. They're you know, always trying to be helpful in the way of like making sure that like, you know, like they're supporting you in the way of, you know, understanding like you're a creator and you want to get ahead. So yeah, it's always just like good. I emailed Eric the other day because I have this huge spread where it's like it goes from the orientation of like a standard like left to right reading experience, and then it like snakes around crazy. So I was asking him, I was like, without leading him on and asking the obvious question, I was just like, oh hey, like how would you read this page? And he was like,
Oh shit.
yeah. So I was like,
Okay.
so but he was like, yeah, I mean I get it, like maybe you'll have like a civilian pick it up and not understand it, but it's whatever. So yeah, there's not really, it's not like there's like a panel of 6 people that are all like in front of you, like talking about how your book may or may not make money. They're just like interested in like what ideas you can put forth. So it's good. It's better and healthier than any other way, I think. So
Yeah, that's what I love about Fantagraphics, and now Uncivilized as well has been added to that. That the types of stories being told vary. Like they're so different. The formats that they put stuff in are different. Like they're not like they don't pigeonhole themselves into one type of story or one type of like product they're putting out. Like you said, always want to do a hardcover, but you don't want to do hardcover. You want to do softcover, and he's like, "Cool, do what you want." You know, like is that like from my perspective, that's what I'm seeing. Like I feel like they just let all of you creatives, whoever's working with them, just do what you do best. Is that a safe assumption? Is that correct?
yeah, I think with the exception of like Emile Ferris's book, where like she kind of was just like this random out of the ether, like cold call, like here's my book, we've never talked before, but would you publish it? And they were like, this is the most amazing thing we've ever seen, like we have to.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people that are at both of these places are like they've cut their teeth in like these small press shows, making minis, doing collaborations, anthologies. So like you go to these shows and you see these people enough times and you're like, okay, like, you know, you're not trying to get an animation job at Nickelodeon, like what are you working on, you know? And so the conversation is a little bit more organic than you being like, hey, like can I have your card, like I'm working on this long thing that you know, and it's just like uncomfortable for everyone involved. So actually going to the physical events, you know, like with the last year it's been tough because it's like it's not necessarily like I'm imagining this glut of like younger cartoonists that like aren't getting these experiences at all, because there are, you know, like these digital events and like there's workarounds in that a lot of younger people are just like on Twitter and like having these organic conversations just like in very, you know, non performative, like, hey, networking in gross ways. So yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's like, I don't know, that was just the way I had to do it because I don't make like web comics that I'm, posting on Instagram or Twitter or something like that. And I've always been really interested in like the printed article as far as like I want to make a book. Like I make books,
Yeah.
I make comics with the assumption that they're going to be spreads, that they're going to be in a book. So people who make books are the people I'm talking to.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time like reading stuff digitally. Like if it just to me it's not the same experience. Like I get sometimes I'll get like advanced PDFs from Image or Dark Horse or something, and maybe indie publishers, and I'm always like, I'd rather just buy the book from you than you sending me a free PDF because I don't get the like I need the book in my hand, like the page,
Right.
the stock, like all of it matters to me, like so when I hear people like tell me, oh, just read it digitally, I'm like, nah, I'll just wait. That's the way it's meant to be read.
Right.
And I like that you say you work traditionally too, because like that's like another avenue like for you also as a cartoonist, like you can sell original artwork. I'm not sure if that's something you do, but like that goes away. I know there's this whole like NFT shit with selling selling digital art. I don't, whatever. My wife is an artist, and I've told her, I was like, I guess like if you want to try, like go for it. But she's like, no, I'd rather. I mean, these are all her paintings behind me. Like she's like, I don't want to do it digitally. Like it's not the same. I don't have the same experience when I'm drawing on a tablet than when I'm painting with a paintbrush. Is that really important for you? Like, have you ever dabbled in digital, or do you just find it like it's not the medium that you like, it's just not for you?
I mean, all the post-production work that I do is pretty minimal, but the what I have to do, it's like immediately my brain is just like, get me the fuck out of here. Like there's nothing there that feels the same. And like I'd imagine from the extent of like if you look at your brain, in like a brain scan as far as like when you're drawing on a computer, when you're drawing on paper, like when you're reading, consuming media through a screen versus like a book, like your brain is a lot quieter when you only have like one thing to take your attention up. And as far as like the NFT stuff, I do sell like original comic pages. Like I don't advertise it a ton, but like somebody comes up to me and is like, I want this specific page, like I usually have it. So yeah, I mean, from what I'm hearing, and I've very minimally looked into it just because it's just I'm not making work for Elon Musk to buy, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Silicon Valley, like Adderall cokeheads don't really read graphic novels about my life. So from what I understand of it though, it's like all of the the electricity that Bitcoin takes up and like the NFTs take up, it's so horrible for the environment. So it's like, I'm already, chopping down a couple trees to make a book and then like print it all. Like I'd like to think that, on the scale I'm doing it, it's not harmful, but like I'm not trying to make like toys of myself that are gonna be in a fucking landfill. And I'm not trying to like, burn down more of the world just to like have some like, rich motherfucker like explain it to his friends that don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
not a world I want to be in. So um but yeah, I mean, I really do appreciate and enjoy what I'm able to do traditionally. I think that, we're getting closer and closer to maybe being able to make this exact replica of what I do with like a brush in Procreate or Photoshop. But I think there's older cartoonists that move on to working with a tablet from the perspective of it's like better for you physically. And the way
Hmm.
that you can angle a Cintiq, it's just like a little bit nicer and like it's just less repetitive motion because you can do it so much faster. So there might come a point where like I do my like a lot of my process work in that way and then I print it out and then I ink it traditionally. But like right now I'm still young and spry and like I enjoy all the parts of the process except the post-production crap that I am like now very free willing to hand off to interns and be like, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to be that guy, but I'm really not going to do it.
And I do want to know like what else do you have in the works besides the next book with Fantagraphics? You did touch on that you got an anthology story. Do you have any more self-published stuff that you're working on in the interim while working on the new book?
I'm putting the new book stuff on my Patreon, so it's sort of like I'm trying to just like satisfy that avenue that I've created. Sean Knickerbocker is a good friend of mine, and he's a creator and a book printer out of Minneapolis that has put together this Rust Belt anthology. So this is the first iteration of it, and I've got this amazing comic about a bank heist. Slash date gone wrong. So it's a very goofy comic of mine that's like, if you really want to see something that really can only exist in like a dumb book with my friends. He's putting together his like second and third issues of this, so I'll probably like be popping into this very intermittently whenever I have time. But I'm doing a little thing for Brian Baines. He has the Bubbles comics fanzine, so he reached out to me and was wondering if I could make something for him. I've got a good handful of friends that are people I've have conversations with about doing work, and it's like a matter of when, because I'm trying to just like fit things into my production schedule with this book. So there's a ton of anthologies that I'm gonna be popping up in. I'm hoping that the Salman Dal anthology in Beirut and like Lebanon like eventually puts my work out, because I was so pumped to potentially go internationally last year, but obviously couldn't. And I'm super interested in trying to get my work translated right now, because I just would love to arrive in France and have pre-made fans there that I didn't really have to do anything to get. But I sent my work in, and like literally the day after, that ship exploded in Lebanon, and like it destroyed someone's studio I saw, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, the world's falling apart. So I have stopped emailing them asking about it, because I'm like, I'll just let you guys sit, it's fine. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of probably edging on the way of being annoying in that I'm appearing in all of these avenues, and just like trying to keep a drumbeat going while I'm working on a long book. So yeah.
And how can we find that Rust Belt book?
That's a great question. This is where, if I had Sean's website, I think it might just be seanknickerbocker.com.
Okay.
He's got copies for sale there. I only have a couple left, so I don't have it on my website. But he's gonna be putting that out, I think, seasonally. So there should be another one coming out soon. This came out in like the fall of last year. So I've been plugging it quite a bit, and there's like more and more people that I'm just hearing about doing pieces for it that I'm like, oh, this is super exciting. So he's trying to put that together and make it a real cool thing, and I really just hope it just continues to explode.
Yeah, I mean, that looked pretty dope. I definitely probably gonna pick that up too. Can you share too, like before we wind this up? Could you share a little bit about like who are the cartoonists that you're really into right now? Maybe some of the books that you read recently that you really enjoyed.
The Kilgore Kickstarter just wrapped. I think that was the newest one that Dan Stafford has done since I was part of it with Tinderella a couple years ago. And it's cool to just see the kind of evolution of having Josh Pettinger over there, of having Alex Graham get Angloid reissued. She was the one who did the Dog Biscuits webcomic that actually won that Cartoon Studio Prize. I was super happy about that. She's amazing. So that wrapped and was funded really quickly, like where I was like, we asked for less money and we took a lot longer to gather it with when we were doing it, and they were funded like that, and they were shooting for the fences with more. Alex Knoll was part of that. He's amazing. He's doing a couple new books that are more related to his teaching artist stuff that he does in Chicago. But he's got a ongoing series called Kids with Guns that's really good. We like to dork out a lot on Instagram, where we like DM each other about pens and just like what we're drawing and like what cool mixed drinks we're making. So like we're always like hanging out with like a continuing Instagram chat. But Josh Pettinger does Goiter. It's really well made. He will do animations a lot too. So I'm kind of like I like haven't made really good friends with him yet because I'm almost positive like he's just gonna like work for Cartoon Network and I'm never gonna see him again. So it's like I haven't put any effort into like actually talking to that dude. Yeah, Noah Van Sciver's got like a collected Blammo of all his like older Blammo series that
Yeah, I picked that up.
yeah, so there's a ton of really cool people on that. Me and my friend Pete Fakey are working to do some work with a completely different publisher for a split comic. He's a really good friend of mine from Minneapolis. And he does like a really weird kind of like superhero inspired, but like it looks like Gary Panner, and like he has like a ton of different wild influences to put together these kind of like themed double digest comics. So we're working on something where we're gonna be doing like a funny animal comic, which you can think of my work and you're like, what the fuck do you mean? And I'm like, I don't know anything, but it's gonna be great. So yeah, it's like there's a million and 10 people doing really cool stuff right now. And I think like a lot of my friends that were maybe a bit more hesitant about using social media have gotten a lot better at it during the pandemic. So they've kind of like, you know, gotten over whatever hangups they had about it and have actually, you know, increased an audience that maybe wasn't there before for independent comics. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every day I'm discovering somebody new. You know, it's like let's say I go on your page, right? And like I'll see a comment and I'll see that it says like comic or art in the name. So I click on it because I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is another creative. And then and then it's like I just fall down the rabbit hole. And there's like not enough time in the day for me to read as much as I want to read. So like my read pile probably, I mean, it grows. Like I'll buy books and I haven't even finished like the last 30 trades that are sitting on my shelf.
Right. Well, and that's why something like this is so nice because it's literally like the first issue he did and put together with that. I mean, it was literally like here's a bunch of like good friends who all like really care about each other's work and like all of our stuff is just touching in here. So then you only have to buy that for, you know, a single $10 and you get a bunch of different people's stuff. So I feel like anthologies are really coming back because there is that realization of like, okay, no, there's no shows right now. Like people don't have a lot of money. Like let's stop wasting people's time and just like make a good, well curated thing where it's like you have people that actually want to make something for this and they're not just like wasting your time with like, oh, you know, here's a quick paycheck or something like that. So yeah, it's really rewarding to put together something like that.
Yeah, that's what I love about, I mean, like you said, like that's what I love about anthologies too, is I've discovered a lot of people through anthologies. Like Shelley Bond curated a couple. She did Hey Amateur, and then she did the Insider Art Book this past year during the pandemic. And just like it's like a who's who of like people for me to check out, and it's really awesome.
Right.
Before I let you go, I want to thank you again for chatting with me, talking comics. It's been a pleasure. But can you share with everybody listening, watching, where they can get your work, where they can find you online? And I'm going to drop links to all of this down below.
Yeah, my Patreon is a good place to just continue to support me if you wanted to, you know, be able to get the insider access to the next book that I've got going on. So fans of Desperate Pleasures who are, you know, interested in seeing that book as it comes out that's like an actually valid way to support me. My Instagram is m.s.harkness. If you become a fan of mine on Patreon, you become my best friend, and so you get to see like all of my like process work of drawing and inking a lot of the stuff I do on like a best friend feed. So otherwise I'm just posting like, today I did egg dyeing with my boyfriend, and so you get to see like weird shit like that. I'm on Twitter. I don't really use it that much. But yeah, I mean, I'm primarily on Instagram. But yeah, my website is msharkness.com, and I've got stuff for sale there and just like more info and such.
All right, cool. Well, like I said, thank you so much. It's been fun talking comics with you, and I cannot wait to do this again with you. I'd really like to be able to chat maybe close when you releasing the next book, or if I see that you got something else coming up, I'd love to help promote.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you again so much. And like I said, looking forward to chatting with you again.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too.